Good morning and welcome to Fire in the Belly. Today we'll have myself, Mighty Pete, and we're joined by Annette Ferguson. Good morning, Annette.
Good morning. Thank you for having me, Pete.
Thank you very much for coming on. It's always great. So tell us, who are you, what are you doing, where are you from?
So my name is Annette Ferguson. As you said, I am CEO of Annette & Co, which is a UK-based accounting firm. So I'm a chartered accountant and I help business owners take home more money from their business, pretty much. Where am I from? I'm originally from Aberdeen, Northeast Scotland. I went to university in Edinburgh. I spent 15 years in London and now I'm back north of the border and about 20 miles south of Edinburgh.
Oh, well, so you've had your time down south, you're back up and back up to where you want to be, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Back amongst the hills and things like that, which is really lovely.
So you're Scottish through and through, is that fair to say?
Yeah, probably fair to say. My husband's English though, so
always keeping it out there. I like that. So that's interesting. So chartered accountant, why a chartered accountant? Tell us.
So I never actually planned on being an accountant as such. I had always, when I was growing up, my dad had his own business and I'd always wanted to run my own business. That was always something I'd had from quite a young age. And when I was deciding what I wanted to do, my career and that kind of things, people said to me, well, if you want to run a business, why don't you study chartered accounting? And then that'll be a really good basis for running a business. I thought, okay, fine. So applied to do accountancy and finance at university, went on and did my professional qualification afterwards. And when I was doing that, I realized that I actually quite liked it. And so I stuck with it pretty much. So when I started my own business, I started an accounting firm because I enjoyed the work I was doing.
Well, that's always good. I mean, like I say, if you're doing what you love, well, you enjoy doing, that's always the main thing. So fair play.
Definitely.
I like it. So tell us, what does Fire in the Belly mean to you?
Oh, what does it mean to me? I think for me, it means family. It means legacy. It means serving. I think those are probably the main things.
Well, and would you say you have it?
On balance, yes, probably for the most part.
They're very interesting. I like that. So family, legacy, and serving. It's kind of an interesting mix up there. Very service based, very connection based.
It is, yeah. And I firmly believe that my business is there to support my life and not the other way around. They are, of course, inextricably linked, but I believe that the reason I'm doing what I'm doing is not just firstly to support my own family and ensure that we have the life that we want to live, but also the focus on what I do with clients is around making sure that they have a business that supports their lives too.
That's a very interesting way of looking at it. So, because so many people are they live and breathe, because we spend so much time at work, right? It's like, and the company, it's, there's so many things, but it can take over. And I'm sure you see it from the accounting side of things. Yeah,
completely. And in all honesty, if I didn't have a husband and kids, I probably would work 20 hours a day. I love what I do, but that's not going to serve anyone. It's not going to serve me and my family. And quite frankly, it's also going to be massively detrimental probably to my own mental health at the same time.
Has that always been the case then? I mean, you just sort of working like mad and then kids come along and that soon rounds the edges off you.
Yeah, a little bit. The children coming along definitely put a new dynamic to that. And I certainly was much more focused on myself actually in the beginning and sort of plowing ahead with that. And yeah, when the kids came along, actually, there was a little bit more of, there's actually more to this than just me working. Actually, I need to have balance in my life. And I love spending time with them. They're my children. I know that's not necessarily the case for everyone, but I do. They're still very young. They're 4 and 5. So they're still very little. And so, spending time with them is, of course, has its challenges, but it's an incredible amount of fun at the same time.
Has it been a natural shift for you in terms of parenting? I mean, is it something that came to you naturally, or?
It's a great question. In, yes and no, actually. That question is, in one side I think yes, but in another side I think no. And the reason I think no is that I had to make a conscious choice at the end of each day to move into parent mode from work mode. Otherwise, I don't approach family and home life in the way that I would like. I'm still kind of focused with my head in work and those kinds of things. So at the weekend, yeah, absolutely. I'm completely switched off from working. I don't check emails, all those things, and I'm completely in parent mode. But I think during the working week, it's much, much harder to get that natural movement between the two.
It's always hard to get the kids to commit to like a time schedule.
Yes, yeah, exactly. They don't like to stick to things, especially sleeping. So
it's like, I sent you an email, the kids are like, yeah, whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
We have the total right to do whatever the hell we want when we want, and you will sort of oblige, it's always interesting.
Exactly.
So take us right back then. So where are you from originally?
So I'm originally from Aberdeen. I grew up in Aberdeen. I was there for the first 17 years of my life. I went to school in Aberdeen, and it was when I went to university that I moved away.
So talk to us about Aberdeen. Was it a good place to grow up for you?
Yeah, it was a good place for me. It's Aberdeen has changed massively over the years, of course, from a fishing village to an oil capital. And so when I was growing up, the oil was already there. It was a pretty wealthy city in reality. It had at that time a population of around 250,000 people, but it managed to support 3 private schools. So all in all, it was a pretty wealthy city, a pretty safe city, compared to many. And it was a pretty comfortable middle-class life for most people. Of course, in any city you have the extremes, but for most people in Aberdeen at that point in time, it was a very safe, kind of comfortable place.
And what about siblings then?
I have a younger sister. My sister is 5 years younger than me. We are very different people. It's just incredibly different.
So you're smarter, better looking, all the usual stuff, right?
Well, of course, naturally, of course. I'm pretty sure she wouldn't say that, but of course.
Well, listen, I mean, it's sort of microphone rights. It's like, I'm here, you're not, so I can say that,
Exactly.
So talk to us about Mini Annette then. What were we looking at?
So in terms of money, did you say?
No, mini. So as in when you
mini.
So when you were
money.
Small. No,
Mini Annette. Mini Annette was studious. I always wanted to study and learn. I also loved dancing. I absolutely loved it. I went to 10 hours plus a week of dance classes, all different types, ballet and jazz and Highland and all sorts. And so I loved dancing. I loved performing. I loved all that side of things. I had a lovely group of friends that I danced with that I adored. And that was, and then my school was lovely too. I actually went to a private girls' school, and I had a very small class, people who I'm still very, very good friends with now. So it was really quite a lovely childhood, in all honesty.
And talk to what was your favorite dancing then? What was your favorite?
Probably ballet, because it's something that I've actually stuck with a lot of my life. So even as an adult, I go to classes from time to time. So that's probably my favorite because it has stuck with me throughout.
Well, and what is it about ballet?
The discipline is a big part of it. The flow, I think, as well. And the challenge. It's challenging yourself the whole time. And one thing I do love about dancing as well is that actually you can't do anything else at the same time. I can't be checking emails whilst I'm at the bar. That doesn't work. I can't do that kind of thing. So actually it's really nice because you get away from everything and then you're just immersed in that activity, which is lovely.
That's an interesting view, that almost you need to be sort of taken away from distraction as such, or as you say, immersed into that thing. So you sort of chunk it up, or you compartmentalize. Is that something you consciously have to do?
From time to time, yes. In reality, I think that there's a lot of competing things that happen in life generally, whether it's our phone going off or our kids around or the laundry to put on, whatever those things are. Actually getting that time where you can focus on this one thing, I think we don't often get that in life. In reality, I think that even if we're doing a task over here, there's something in the back of your head goes off going, oh, but I need to remember and do that over there as well. And I think that there's not often chances where actually you can just completely be immersed in one singular thing.
Mm-hmm. It's always, I suppose getting that away from that distraction and stuff is, it's especially nowadays, social media and life and kids and all the rest, it's just sort of burst through. So
exactly. And so I like the headspace of actually being able to just focus.
Do you like your own company?
Oh, I love it. Yeah, I absolutely love it. Yeah.
It's always good. The big smile on the face is always the tell. You'd be surprised because a lot of people are like, nope, don't like spending time with me. It's like, yeah, no, actually, I'm okay. I'm good,
Yeah, I really like spending time with me. I probably, in reality, could do with spending more time with me, but I don't. But yeah, I think it's something that I do actually strive to, is to spend more time with me and find those pockets, because I very much like my own time. I'm very much introverted, so spending lots of time with lots of people does drain me.
That's interesting. Do you know why?
I don't know why, really. I know that, my dad was the same, so I don't know whether it's genetic or whether it's just, something that I'd learned during childhood, or I'm not sure what the reason is, but I know that that's the feeling I have.
Oh, fair enough. And then in terms of when, what did you know what you were going to do when you grew up at that time? What was your plans?
At that time, when I was very little, I wanted to be a dancer, but that was never going to work out because I was never good enough at a young enough age. And I realized that relatively young. By the time I was 10, I realized that was never going to happen in a million years. And then I had a brief spell of wanting to be a physiotherapist, but then I realized that I didn't really like ill people. So that probably wasn't going to work too well either. So then and that was probably around 11, 12, maybe that type of age. And then after that is when I thought, actually, maybe I'll run a business, but I didn't know what that would look like. I had no idea what type of business or any of that stuff. That was just kind of where I sort of went with that thought and sort of stayed with that thought for the rest of my life, pretty much.
Well, it's a really amazing early age to actually have that decision that, and I'm wondering, is that connected to not wanting to be around sick people? It's like,
yeah, I know. Yeah, maybe it was. I think as I say, my dad ran his own business when I was growing up. So I was very exposed to that. And I was exposed to the lifestyle that gave us as well, and what he was able to do and those kinds of things. So I think I probably saw that as a good option from that side as well.
Sounds like you take after your dad. Is that a fair statement?
I do. Yeah, it's a fair statement. Yes, it is. He's also a qualified chartered accountant too, incidentally.
Apple doesn't fall far from the tree, as they say.
Yeah, exactly. We're very, very similar.
That's it. What about your mother then? What field was she in?
My mum was a stay-at-home mum. Ever since she basically got pregnant with me, she was a stay-at-home mum. So she was very ill during her pregnancy, so she gave up work. At that point in time, she was doing kind of secretarial type stuff. And she gave up when she was pregnant with me and never went back, to be honest. So she was a homemaker and a stay-at-home parent.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
So then through secondary school, then what was your shine out subjects? What was your go-to?
I had to work really hard at school. I wasn't one of those people that naturally got good grades. My easiest subject for me was maths. And physics probably as well. Maths and physics were probably the two, but I was somebody who had to work really hard. I had to study a lot. I had to put in a lot of work to do that. My school was quite competitive, really. It was, you were expected to sort of be a doctor or a lawyer, and there was that sort of pressure in that environment. And I was never going to be either of those. I was never the straight A student at all. You know, if I got B's, I was happy. If I got A's, I was jumping from the rooftops. I was ecstatic. So I had to study hard to get those kind of B type level grades and C's.
Were you happy enough studying, or had you to be sort of coerced into it?
At the beginning, I definitely had to be coerced when I was younger, but after a while, actually, I quite enjoyed it, and I still love learning to this day, actually. So I think that some of that has rubbed off, and I did start to enjoy learning. I think part of the problem at school as well, even though you choose your subjects, I think, you know, often you're learning about stuff that you think, what relevance does this have at any point in my life? Why do I need to know who Henry VIII's wives are? I don't know how that's relevant to my life. And I think I often thought that when I was learning things, like, why do I need to really know how an oxbow lake is formed? I'm not sure why. And yes, it might be relatively interesting, but do I really need that data in my head? I'm not sure. And so I think I had that during school, whereas of course, stuff I learn nowadays is very much my choice to delve into whatever subjects those might be. And therefore, actually, you know, I do enjoy learning more than I did probably back then.
So a very serious question then, in terms of how is an oxbow lake formed?
Oh, I don't know. I don't remember. It's something to do with erosion and something else. I do not remember. It was a long time ago.
Always, it's one of, as you say, you're sitting in class and they're teaching you this, and you kind of, you know, it becomes a memory test after a while. It's like,
completely.
You know, as soon as this memory test is over, I am dumping that knowledge out of my head. I really don't
absolutely. And you do think, you know, what purpose does that serve, especially nowadays when everyone has a phone and Google, and what purpose is actually a memory test when it comes to education? It doesn't feel like there is a purpose in reality when information is so freely available at our fingertips. You can just ask Alexa, type it on your phone, or put it into your computer, and usually you're around most of those at the same time.
You know, it's always amazing how you have all those, you know, random bits of information. So what was your method of learning, and have you held on to that through your life?
Yeah, I have. So my main method of learning is writing, actually. I used to basically highlight textbooks and write notes, and I pretty much do that now when I read books. If I'm reading you know, factual books, so business books and those kinds of things, I do exactly the same now. I highlight them, I make notes in the margins, all those things, and that's what I used to do as a child as well. Actually, I used to study in that same way.
Cool. So then take us on forward then. So you were, you know, really sort of through the end of school. What did you head off to do then?
So once school ended, I went down to Edinburgh to Heriot-Watt University to study accountancy and finance. So Heriot-Watt is a campus-based university. So I moved onto campus in my first year, moved into halls, and and enjoyed being 100 yards from the student union for my first year.
It's always an interesting initiation and immersion into the world of sort of being away from home and also being that close to the students' union.
Yeah, it's kind of an immersion into semi-grown-upness, I think, possibly not grown up.
How did you find the actual conversion over? Did it something you enjoyed and look forward to?
Yeah, it is. I was really excited to go to university, actually. I was really, really excited to move away and get some independence and all those things. So yeah, I was very excited to go to university. I was I was nervous about making friends and new people. I'm not somebody that just goes up and starts talking to people, despite the fact we're on a podcast right now, but that's not my natural inclination, and still isn't, to just go and start conversations with people. So that part I was quite nervous about, but the whole experience I was very excited for.
That's amazing that, and that transition, as you say, were you still slightly introverted at that point?
Yeah.
I mean, was that still something?
Yeah, absolutely.
You enjoyed the studying side, but
yeah, absolutely. I mean, I did get involved with obviously going out, and I made a group of friends and did it that way. And I really enjoyed that.
Did you continue the dancing through university?
I did, yeah. So I stopped briefly for the first couple of years. I didn't dance, and then I found a class locally that I really enjoyed. So I went back and started it up again, yeah.
Oh, fantastic. So then you got through all that. Where'd you head off to then?
So after I graduated, I went to a small accounting firm in Edinburgh. So I stayed in Edinburgh for my chartered accounting training. And when you're doing your chartered accounting training, you basically work full-time for a firm, and then you also study at the same time as well. So I worked for a small firm, Cowan and Partners, for 3 years doing my chartered accounting trainee qualifications and the practical that was related to that as well. And I really enjoyed my time there. I worked with some great people who I'm still friends with today. It was a firm where they took in graduates every year, so there was always people in your year or in the year above you, but there was only a handful of us, so they took 2 to 3 in every year. So it was a nice little group that we formed there as well. So I really enjoyed my time there.
And did the theory match the practical when it came down to it?
Sometimes is the answer to that. Yes, it does overall. Overall you have to prepare things in a certain way and do tax comps in a certain way and all that kind of stuff. But of course, when you're doing the theory, the assumption is that you get handed this beautiful lot of information to work with, whereas in reality, sometimes you have clients who turn up with literally a bin bag of paperwork and hand it to you. So they didn't quite prepare you for that when in the classroom side of things.
Yeah, you get a real sort of insight into people's brains, as you say, when they turn up with this jumble of stuff. And yeah, that's the glorious side of it, right?
It is. I mean, it's incredible actually what some people would hand us. They just basically hand us all their mail, and you'd find people's passports in there, you'd find bank cards, all sorts of stuff would be in that bundle because they just didn't want to deal with any of it. It was really quite surprising and not what I expected at all.
How does that actually sit with you? I mean, are you slightly baffled by that sort of behavior, or can you understand it?
Yeah, I completely understand it. I think a lot of people are nervous when it comes to money side of things, finances side of things. A lot of people are also nervous when it comes to, brown letters from HMRC and all those kinds of things. And it means that they actually just want to bury their head in the sand. I completely understand that reaction exists, and, that's okay. In reality, as long as someone's opening it and looking at it and dealing with it, then it's okay. If no one is, then you're probably going to end up with a big problem down the line in reality. But I completely understand the natural inclination that people have on that.
I suppose because the finance and accounting, it's actually something that is not really taught, is it? I mean, and it's not, you just sort of, you become a graduate, or you get into the world of work and all the rest. And as you say, you start getting the brown envelopes and you're like, what do I do with this?
Yeah, completely. And people don't know, they get their pay slips and they don't know what if it's right or what the stuff is, because no one teaches you it at all. I mean, in reality, there should be something in school that teaches you about the tax system and how that works, because you get thrown into a job or running a business or whatever that is, and you in reality just don't know what you're looking at because no one's taught you.
It is crazy in so many ways. I mean, it's such a fundamental part of everything, really, when you think about it.
Yeah.
Why do you think, why is it not taken on, or why do people not sort of look into it more? Is it fear-based? Is it sort of knowledge-based, or what is it?
I think it's fear-based, and I think that there's a couple of things when I speak to people about it, and they say, well, one, like, I'm no good with numbers, and so they use that's almost like a barrier that they put up to that. Like, I was never good at maths at school, I'm no good with numbers, and they have this self kind of talk that they tell themselves that actually means they just ignore anything that's got a number in it, including their money, financial side of things. You also have people who have lots of sort of money and financial stories that they have from their childhood or their past that they start bringing into their adult life. And again, that really messes up how they are dealing with these things. And it really negatively impacts their lives in some instances, because burying your head in the sand about the money side of things is never gonna work out great. And so there's a huge amount of the population, I think, that do that, unfortunately. And I think if we were a society that were happier to talk about money and happier to talk about finances, actually maybe we wouldn't be in that position. You know, consumer debt is at an all-time high, and of course, as we're recording this, hopefully coming out, I'm not quite sure, of the pandemic situation, people on furlough, people being made redundant, all those things, and people are just not willing to speak about money because, of course, it's not, you know, you don't speak about money, it's not proper, it's not right, all those kinds of things. And actually, I think if we were a society that was happier to speak about that side of things, we might be happier overall.
Why do people not talk about money?
I think there's a lot of, it's not polite, it's rude. There's that type of side of things where they've had those messages for years and years, and that's kind of ingrained in society. I think there's also an embarrassment factor as well. I think people either don't want to be seen to be making more than their friends because they'll then be looked on like, oh yeah, too big for their boots, that type of thing. Or the opposite, they don't want to be like, oh, we can't do that because so-and-so is really poor. Like, I think there's so much judgment that factors into it as well at the same time, unfortunately. And there's a lot of emotion. Money is emotional. For most people, there's a lot of emotion around money in either direction.
That's interesting, isn't it? The fact that, money being just paper and plastic and metal and whatever, but...
Yeah, absolutely. Money is just a tool. That's all it is. There's nothing more than that. It's a tool. But there's all this other stuff that's associated with it for people.
Do you like money?
Yes, I do. I do like money.
That was a very strong yes and a very central yes. Oh yes.
Yeah, I mean, I think what's not to like about it in reality, the more money that we make, the more we can help, support, give, whether that's to our own families, to other places, whether that's to society as a whole. I think that in generating money, it can and should be used in a positive way.
Because I know for a lot of people, as you say, it has negative connotations, right?
Yeah, it does. Yes, very much so. There's all these sort of things, money doesn't grow on trees, only crooks have money, all these types of thoughts and that people have, or things they've been told. And I think that generates the negativity around money a lot of the time.
Just going back a bit in terms of, your introvertedness and that side. I mean, what was your sort of self-talk? I mean, are you generally, you come across very positive, very factual, very kinesthetic, just very feeling, sensing and doing type thing?
Yeah.
What is your internal language like then and there?
Yeah, that very, very kinesthetic. Yeah, absolutely. And I've always been pretty positive. Of course, there's times where I'm a bit grumpy, quite frankly. Ask my husband, he'll be like, yes, she can be grumpy. That happens. But actually, most of my life, I've been very, very positive. That is kind of who I am, really. I don't say mantras or have any like fancy affirmations that I do or any of that stuff. I just think that generally people are good. Generally the world is a nice place, and actually we should just all be kind to each other. That's, you know, that is how I view life, and therefore that's a good thing.
I mean, you're saying obviously there's no mantras and affirmations there, right? Do you have to protect yourself from other people in terms of, because I mean, some people will quite happily spread their message on you whether you want to or not.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I think for me, that's about boundary setting and making sure that you understand who to listen to and when to walk away from conversations, and when to say, actually, this relationship is not a good one for me, and whether that's friends or family or whatever that is. And I'm not saying like dump all your friends and family, but make sure you put those boundaries in place so that you know, if a discussion goes in this direction, actually you're going to say, you know what, I don't want to, I'm not interested in speaking about that, or whatever that needs to be, in order to protect yourself at the same time.
Sorry, what do you love talking about, and what don't you love talking about?
What do I love talking about? I love talking about business in general. I love speaking about business. That's why one reason I love what I do is that I get to speak to so many business owners, and I really enjoy those conversations. I love learning about people's businesses, what they do, what drives them. So I love that. I love speaking about my family. That gives me a lot of joy, speaking about my kids and my husband and all those things I love speaking about. What don't I like speaking about? What came to my mind there was emotions, emotional intelligence, conflict, those types of things. I don't like speaking about them. I'm not very good with those things. It's what I tell myself anyway, interestingly.
Yeah. No, it's interesting, and it's interesting. You come across, as very self-aware. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
It's always, I suppose with kids do tend to bring in an emotional side to life as well, so it's a very different.
They do, and actually I think the really interesting thing with children is they wear all their emotions, so you can see them go through a raft of emotions during the day. And of course we as adults also go through all those emotions in the day, but I think that often we either push those to one side or suppress them. I mean, clearly we don't show them as children do, otherwise, the world would melt down, quite frankly. But it's really interesting, I think, to watch a child throughout the day, how they do go between their emotions, and how you can really see. That's a lot, a lot of the time with our kids, we will say to them, what are you feeling now? How are you feeling? What feeling is this? Because you can see them, like they'll shout or they'll cry or they'll, be hysterically laughing. And to say to them, for them to identify what that emotion is and understand it, I think is really important as they become adults.
It's interesting because they blow up and they blow over very quickly too.
Yes. Yeah, within seconds.
My 4-year-old, I can go from being her favorite to I don't love you anymore to within 10 seconds. It's like, wow, that was an emotional shift. Yeah,
it's incredible, isn't it? I'm the same. As I say, mine are 5 and 4. So we have exactly the same in our house. And one minute they are saying that they're each other's best friends and they want to marry each other and all this kind of stuff. Of course, not realizing that they can't do that. But the next minute they're hating each other, and it is incredible the range that they go through within very, very short periods of time. And we do that as adults too.
There's something very peaceful about that, though. They don't tend to pull the emotional baggage, and I suppose it's a bit like it's a bit like money, as you were saying there, in terms of money's just money. Their emotion is their emotion, and what they see they react to.
Yeah.
Before they get into years and layers of stuff and beliefs, and, all it's kind of going. Yeah, it's just that. Fair enough. Blow up if you want to. I'm going to go back a little bit. You said there's certain times you get a bit grumpy. What makes you grumpy?
Lack of sleep makes me grumpy, for sure. That's a big one. What makes me feeling like I'm being taken for granted makes me grumpy.
Okay.
I rarely am, incidentally, but sometimes I I may decide to read into a situation differently than how it actually is. And that will then make me grumpy. What else makes me grumpy? It often links back to lack of sleep. And the situation is the situation, but it will often be because I'm not rested and I don't feel like I've rejuvenated my body and my mind. So it may be that the situations exist, but when you funnel it down to the core thing, it's usually because I'm tired or hungry. I am a really good hangry person. So yeah, tired or hungry. They're the two that really can trigger me.
I have one of those in my house. Yeah.
Yeah.
My wife is there. Is like, if you don't feed her, good luck.
Yeah. That's the same with me. It's honestly, it's very funny. It's not funny for everyone around me, obviously, but looking back at the events, it's very funny, and you can really see that it's that it can be in relation to just needing to eat.
So that sort of Snickers adverts right up your street, then,
Yeah, exactly.
Bringing out the crazy lady. Here we go.
Yeah, definitely.
Not that I'm saying you're crazy, of course. I'm referring to my own.
I'm not taking it personally, don't worry.
Oh, that's awesome. So tell me, so you really sort of through that period then of, getting up to your chartership and things, and then where did you go from there?
So after I was qualified, in my final year of qualifying, I met a boy who happens to now be my husband. But at that point, he was living in London and I was living in Edinburgh. So we met at the new year, and my training contract was up in this September. So I was planning on leaving my training firm anyway after I qualified. That was always my plan. I'd never planned to stay. I thought I'll find something else, get some more experience. And as time was going on, we had a discussion about, okay, well, what do you think about moving to London? He was, at that point in time, he was an energy and gas trader. And so he wasn't really able to move. He had to be down south. So okay, fine. So moved to London. Came in the sort of final month, I was coming down for interviews, having days off and all those kinds of things. And I took a job as a financial controller with Goldman Sachs and moved down to London at that point in time, and moved in with Alex.
Well, that's quite one, I suppose, changing location, the boys, getting to see him, and then also into a big firm as well. I mean, it's all three big changes, right?
It was huge. Yeah, it was really huge. Going from that very small accounting firm, 3-partner firm, there's probably, I don't know, maybe 30 employees, to Goldman Sachs in the city was insane. It was just such an incredibly huge culture shift and jump, and even little things like the firm I trained with, you got an hour's lunch break. You could switch off your computer and you got to. That does not happen at Goldman Sachs. You don't get to sit and twiddle your thumbs for an hour in the middle of the day. That does not happen. The office I was in had an on-site doctor, an on-site dentist, an on-site gym, an on-site pretty much everything, dry cleaners, so that basically you didn't have to leave the office. I mean, that's essentially how it was set up. So an incredibly huge culture shift from one to the other, for sure.
It is always interesting because I know that, as you say, the dry cleaning, everything's kind of more or less conveniently there, and go, this is really handy.
Yeah. The thing is, you think it's handy for the first month or two, and after that, you're like, hang on. This is designed so that I only have to go home and sleep, and then I come back again. And so yeah, I had that as well. And then also moving from Edinburgh, I used to walk to work when I was in Edinburgh, and then I was getting on the tube every day. That whole situation with, hundreds of thousands of other people every single morning. Again, that was a big shift in my life, really, going from one to the other.
Well, you must be in early 20s at that point, were you?
I was early 20s. I was 24. I was 24 when I moved. Yeah.
It's a good time to go to London too, because I mean, you're sort of a bit more flexible and eyes are open. Like you said, there's a lot of sensory overload there in terms of, all the things you're seeing and doing, and everything that's going on. How was the actual the immersion process? Did you enjoy it, or was it?
I did. I mean, I found it difficult because I think that I found London a lot less friendly than being in Scotland. So I did find that difficult. I found it hard to make friends because it felt like when I moved that everyone already had their own sort of groups. So that was quite challenging for me. And there was also the added thing that actually I wasn't enjoying the work. So I was being paid great, but I felt like I had to sell some of my soul, in all honesty, and I just didn't enjoy my time there. After about 6 months, I realized I was not an investment banking person. It just didn't click with my personality. And I was really worried about leaving too early, about how it would look on my CV. So I wanted to stick it out for longer. You know, I was young. I thought this is going to look really bad. And so I decided, right, I'll stick it out for 18 months. And then that will look okay when I go to move. But I knew relatively early on that investment banking world wasn't for me.
That's interesting. So you were, I mean, it was sort of selling your soul as such. I mean, what was it, what part of the work did you really enjoy then, I suppose, that you brought with you?
Yeah. So if I could have done my work in a silo on my own with no interaction of anyone else there, I probably would have had an okay time. Yeah, the work itself was interesting. The actual, like, sitting at my computer doing the work was interesting in itself. I struggled with some of the personalities, shall we say, that also existed in that situation. People who were, in all honesty, quite willing to claim your work as theirs in order to get ahead. And that didn't sit well with me. I didn't like it. And, you know, I just thought, this is not actually what I want to be doing. I don't want to do that. So I'm not going to progress here. And then everyone's just going to be claiming my stuff as theirs the rest of my life. Like, this is not where I want to be. So, yeah.
It's super interesting because, I mean, one of the initial things you'd said was, you know, in terms of your fire in the belly, in terms was, you know, serving and legacy, and and there you are serving, but it's not you're not getting the recognition.
Yeah,
it's been taken in the wrong context. There's a switchover point there where it goes from being okay to not being okay.
Yeah, completely, for me. And I think that, you know, I think that it's really important to give people recognition for the work they do. I think that is, I think that's just, I don't think you can actually grow and nurture a team if you brush over the work they're doing, and I just think that's horrible from a relationship perspective as well. If you're not acknowledging what people are doing and you're not, what's the word? I suppose grateful in a way for people putting in the work and doing the effort. And I think if you don't do that, you just breed resentment. And that's what happens.
No, I get that. I mean, you know, it's understanding, I suppose, then, you know, the people that are around you, what sort of habits and traits were it that didn't align with yours.
Yeah, I think it's probably a values clash in reality. I didn't recognize that at the time. I was young, and I just thought, like, what are these people doing? This is weird. But, you know, looking back, there was definitely just a misalignment of values between mine and theirs, and that was okay. You know, some lovely people are going to investment banking and work there all their lives and get on great and don't mind the politics, and, you know, they see that as just part of what they're in there for, and that's completely fine. But for me, I thought, why am I doing this? I don't need this.
It's interesting. And I mean, I suppose, did you get to speak to your dad much, and is it something in your career that you talked about? Because I'm sure it was interesting for him too, right?
Yeah, my dad and my husband were the main people that I spoke to about it, really. And, you know, we had those discussions, like, okay, well, how long should I stick it out for? that was basically the discussions that we had. And everyone was like, well, a year and a half is probably fine, because then you can, then you've got 18 months somewhere, that's probably going to look okay. You've done more than a year's cycle. Because I was in a financial control role as well, you want to get through a year end basically as well, so that you've done the whole picture. So it was like, well, a year and a half, you've done a cycle, you've done a little bit more, then actually that's probably going to be okay. So yeah, that's basically what I then sort of looked towards was, okay, I'll stick it out for this long. At this point, I'll start looking for something else in a different area.
And did you stick to the plan?
I did. Yes, I did. 18 months later, I left and I moved into oil and gas. So I went to work for BP in oil and gas, again, in a financial control, product control type role. And for the liquefied natural gas desk, LNG. And I really enjoyed that. I really, really enjoyed my time at BP. The culture was very, very different. My boss was amazing. And I really, really loved my time there. But weirdly, after about a year, they were offering up voluntary redundancy. And I thought, be a nice. They were giving quite a generous package for voluntary redundancy. So I put my hand up and said, okay, I'll volunteer for that. We'll get a nice little windfall. And then I had this very strange experience that when they said, yes, you've been granted voluntary redundancy, I went, oh, hang on. You don't want me? And they're like, you said you wanted this. And I'm like, oh, yeah. I felt a huge amount of rejection at that point in time from that, which was which I never expected to feel, because I was the one saying, yes, I'll go, like, that's fine. But actually when they said yes, I was like, oh, but hang on, I like this job. And I've just said I'm going to go. And now they say they don't want me. And there was a lot of weird emotions tied up with that.
That's hilarious. Yeah. There is, as you say, there's values like what, I offered to maybe go expecting this sort of, sort of, no, you
like, no, stay. We really want you. Yeah.
Okay. It's like, wow. Okay. So did you take it?
Very odd. Yeah, I did. Yeah, I took voluntary redundancy and I moved into another role in oil and gas. So I moved to Centrica, the parent company, British Gas, and did an oil and gas financial control role there as well.
Wow. What was it about oil and gas? Is it just something that appealed or connected to the...
I do wonder if it's because it was connected to the Aberdeen side of things. It's never an industry that I actually saw myself being in. But actually when I got into it, I really enjoyed it. I found it really interesting. And so, so when I moved from BP, I thought, actually, I want to stay in this industry. I was really enjoying the work I was doing. I found it really interesting. So, I thought, actually, you know what, I'll stay in this industry and see where it goes.
No, it's, I suppose, is the industry almost irrelevant to you? Because, a product's a product, right? When it comes to the numbers and, the structure and the format and the cycles may change, but.
Yeah, I completely, it's really interesting, because actually a big part of what I enjoy with the work I have done and do is actually the learning outside of the actual head-in desk stuff, as it were. So yes, a number is a number, a P&L is a P&L, but actually what I enjoy is learning about the other bits that surround that. And so I think that's why I enjoyed oil and gas, because the area I was in was liquefied natural gas, LNG. It was relatively new to the UK at that point in time, and so there was a lot of stuff happening around it. It was really interesting. I thought it was really interesting. I'm sure some people don't, but I found it incredibly interesting. And that's why I liked it, was actually not just this is the profit and loss account, this is the budget, this is the balance sheet, this is the money you have to move. It wasn't that stuff. It was everything that surrounds it that I enjoyed. And actually, it's the same now. The bit I really enjoy is speaking to clients and learning about their businesses and that. So it's the supplemental stuff that I enjoy in a role, actually, I think.
Well, that's what I was going to say, because what does interest you? You're saying it's what it's connected to, is it?
I think so. Yeah, I think so. I think it's the ability to learn. Actually, I think is what interests me in what I do. I think it's the ability to keep growing and learning.
Yeah, it's always it's interesting, I suppose, and everything it's connected to.
Yeah.
That's cool. So in terms then, when did you head to then once you'd How long were you with those guys?
So I was at BP for a year, and then I was at Centrica for about a year and a half, at which point I started my own business. So that's when I moved to starting my own business. And it was just after we got married, and we thought, now might be a good time to give this a go. So I set up my business, and I did it at the same time initially as I was working for Centrica. So I started taking holiday days to go to networking events. This was 11 years ago. So there was a lot more sort of face-to-face networking events, much less social media stuff. Although Facebook and Twitter had both started to come on the scene a bit for business at that point. So I did some of that, but a lot of the stuff I was doing was face-to-face networking. So I used to have to take holidays off work. I used to sit in the car and do prospect calls at lunchtime. I used to do all that kind of stuff to start building my business. And I was kind of going along and doing that, and I was enjoying it. I was really enjoying it. And after about 6 months, probably, I said to my husband, I'm really struggling for time now, just to go to events, to meet with prospects, to have calls, to have client calls. Like, this is starting to get too much. And we had this conversation over a weekend, and he said, well, maybe we could ask to go part-time. Maybe you could, let's see what we can do. Incidentally, it was actually against my employment contract to be running a business. So we'd had this discussion. I was like, well, if I ask to go part-time, what am I going to say? Like, how's that going to work? Can I go part-time? Why? No reason. I was just kind of like, how's that going to work? So anyway, we sort of left it there like that on the Sunday. And by crazy coincidence of fate, on the Monday, got into the office, and my manager said to me, Annette, can I have a word in the meeting room? I'm like, oh, okay. Off I go. And he said, so it's come to my attention. And I knew straight away what he was going to say. He said, it's come to my attention that you've been running a business. And I said, yes. He said, that's against your contract of employment. I said, yes. He said, so you have to choose what you want to do. And I said, well, I'm going to run my business. And he said, well, I'll therefore need your letter of resignation. I said, okay, I'll get you my letter of resignation. I'll be on your desk tomorrow. And he said, and by the way, well done. I think it's a really good move. So it's like, great. So that was it, basically. That was me working my notice and leaving corporate, leaving, proper employment, as it were, and moving to running my business full time.
How are the energy levels at that point?
Well, there were a mixture of petrified and excited. I was really excited, but also I was thinking, what am I going to do? How am I going to fill a whole day? Like, I knew that it was very difficult to work full time and run this business, but I knew that I also did not have enough work to fill 9 to 5, 8 to 6, whatever that looked like. So yeah, there was a bit of, okay. And actually that's when I dived into learning again. So I said, okay, I need to learn everything there is about finding clients, getting clients. How do I market? How do I sell? How do I grow this business? Because otherwise I'm going to have to go back and get a job. I'm not, I need to work out how this is actually going to work in reality.
And were you sort of positively driven at this point? I mean, was it something you were obviously looking forward to? It was okay.
Yeah.
We just
I was very positively driven at that point. Yeah, definitely.
Wow. And I mean, how did you find? Obviously, you're still based in London and going through all these changes and everything else was going on.
Yeah, at that point I was. Yeah, at that point we were still down south, and yeah, so I kind of moved to working from home. And like I say, at that point, there was a lot of local networking and stuff that was done to build a business. So that's basically what I dived into at that point. I went to all the local events to try and get my name out there and to meet people. But whilst I was doing that, I was really very aware that we weren't going to be living in London forever. That was never, ever our plan, was to live there for the rest of our lives. So whilst I was doing that, I had this kind of eye on the fact that actually at some point we're not going to live locally. So I need to also find clients who are willing to who are not just looking for a local accountant. They're willing to understand that actually I'm not going to be around the corner my whole life and their whole business life. So I was doing the local networking stuff, but I was also starting to use social media, even though at that point it was in its infancy, to start, you know, speaking about things and trying to get clients that way at the same time, so that as and when we moved, I wouldn't have to kind of burn the business down and start again somewhere else. So that's basically what I started doing. Was, even though I was living quite locally to my clients, I started having calls via Skype. At the time, it was Zoom, didn't exist. So I started having, you know, video calls and things rather than face-to-face meetings, to try and get that instilled in the relationship from the beginning.
It's amazing to get that, as you say, to almost have the foresight to build in a non-geographical based business. I mean, almost ahead of your time in terms of that, and you know, getting that, because I'm sure with accounting, some people, as you say, they want to turn up with a bin bag of letters, which is fine to a point, but it's like, yeah, I don't know what's in this bag, so yeah.
I didn't really want those clients. I didn't want the bin bags with passports in clients.
It's like a finders keepers type thing. It's like, if
exactly.
anything non-account, I get to keep everything else. But
yeah.
Wow, so that's quite a transition, and you know, I suppose, one, being on your own, but two, also keeping the eyes out then. You know?
Yeah, absolutely. And at the beginning, I really wasn't particularly disciplined about what I was doing during the day and things as well. I would, you know, I'd kind of get up and I'd have my laptop on my knee, and I wasn't really disciplined in my day. Whereas now it's very, very different. I get up at and even before kids, actually, kids of course make you get up, but even before that, I actually had a point where I thought, this is crazy. I need to get up. I need to get dressed. I need to, you know, get ready for the working day, because otherwise my day would just drift. I'd have a shower at 11 o'clock because I had to go to a networking event at lunchtime. And actually the productivity levels were not where they should have been at that point in time. And I think at the beginning, actually, I probably dented my own growth at the beginning, because I wasn't as focused and as productive as I could have or should have been. Now, maybe that was partly my age, partly the fact that I'd just come out these, stressful corporate roles, and actually I just needed a little bit of headspace and things. Partly because I didn't really know what to do on a daily basis. I was waking up and I was thinking, well, if I've done my client work, now what do I do? And, you know, so there was that as well that came into it. So there's a lot of factors that probably affected the fact that I was not as effective and productive as I could have been. Looking back, I think, I had all that time. What did I do with all that time?
I know it is always interesting, because I had 10 years in London myself, and that transition out, you know, going, I've come from a company of 10,000, whatever, you know, your day is allocated, you know, God forbid you actually took a lunch, you know, it's noisy, never. It's meeting back to back. Blackberries, as it was at the time for me anyway.
It was, me too.
You know, and you're just constantly like, you know, pinging and dinging, and then there's wine after work and all, you know.
Yes.
And then and
then you've got a 2-hour commute, because you've got an hour each way on the tube as well.
Yeah. And then you suddenly go self-employed, and you're like, I'm not commuting. Might not have a BlackBerry. You know, it's all this. And it's, I mean, how was the transition for you?
I struggled, actually. I really struggled in the beginning. I struggled being my own all day. I struggled with what to do, and it wasn't that simple, actually. I loved part of it. I loved the fact that I had made this jump into running my own business. I was really pleased with that, and I was really proud of that. But also, it can be a bit lonely, actually, in the beginning, particularly when you start to run your own business, because you don't know other business owners particularly well at that point in time. So it's not like you've got that camaraderie with them. You've just lost all your colleagues. I mean, they're not lost. Clearly, you could stay in touch with them, but they now have a very different life to you. Their life still looks like yours used to, and yours is not even close to being the same anymore. Like we said, you don't have 100 meetings a day. You don't have your BlackBerry pinging off I remember when I first started, I did have a BlackBerry for my business, but I used to turn all the notifications on, because it was really exciting when I would get a work email, because hardly anyone had my email address. Hardly anyone knew who I was. And so that was a very different situation than I'd come out of in corporate. And so your old corporate colleagues, they don't really get what your life looks like now. So, and often your partner or your husband or your wife or whatever that is, they probably also don't really get what your life is like now either, unless they've also been self-employed or running a business. And so I think that it can be an incredibly lonely journey at the beginning, and it can be really hard to actually say, I don't know what I'm doing here, and I'm not sure what I should be doing every day, and I don't know how to find out, and all those things can be really difficult to start with.
Because it's hard to, as you say, you've made a sort of made a big stand and said, right, I'm out of here, see you, bye.
Yeah, later.
Confidently stormed out of the office, and you're like, oh, bye.
Like, uh-oh.
Yeah. So you have to, as you say, you have to sort of, for all those round years going, yes, it was the right move and I'm delighted I did it. And then you get home and go, what have I done?
Yeah, exactly. There's a real mixed emotion to it, for sure.
Sure. That's amazing how our values adjust at that time, right? It's like, although you maybe do get value conflicts and maybe not where you really want to be long term and what's going on, but yet you quickly adjust and that becomes your security blanket. And you're like, well, do I love London? Yeah, it's fine, and it works for me, and I work for it, and that's fine. But ultimately, where you really want to be,
Yeah, completely.
So talk to us about then, sort of how growing your business and working for yourself then.
So after I took the jump, I basically, like I said, I piled into learning about marketing and about sales, because I had no idea about those sides at all. It's not something I'd ever read about, looked at, or anything. So I dived into that to try and figure out how I grow this business. I knew I could do the accounting side. That was like, okay, fine. But the rest, I was like, oh, hang on a minute, there's all this other stuff. So I learned how to build a website and all that kind of thing. Learned a lot about marketing and that side as well. And basically then did, again, a lot of local networking, started doing social media stuff, and basically kept doing that to build up a client base and a client portfolio. And then, I just grew the business that way, and also through kind of referrals from existing clients as I grew and grew and grew. And then got to the point where I started needing a helping hand with the workload. So got some kind of contractors in at the beginning to help me with that type of side of things as well. Because it was just getting too much for me on my own. And again, knowing that I didn't want to be in London forever, when I was getting people in to help and support me, I was doing that. They were remote. So it wasn't like everyone come to an office. I was working from home, and so was everyone else. And I knew that's the way that I wanted to build the business as well. And actually, it's the same way that we operate now. With or without COVID, everyone works from home and everyone is remotely located, because, we all want to have that ability to not be stuck to one location. So kind of going back to that point in time, I started doing that, and I started growing. And I continued doing that for must be 5 years. And then I got pregnant with my son, and got pregnant with him. That was all great. And then he was born. And the thing is, my husband and I had always spoken about, at some point, him being a stay-at-home dad. And it was like, is this doable? Is this going to work? I was pregnant at that point. It was like, I don't think the business wasn't earning what his wage was earning. And so it was like, not sure about this, but continued whilst I was pregnant to grow the business. I worked up to the point my waters broke on basically, literally up to that point. And then 3 days later, because it was the weekend, I was back at my desk. So I was constantly still trying to grow this business. And that became very, very challenging at that point, because now I had a newborn and a business, and Alex was still working full time. So that is when things got really hard, because basically having to try and work during, they say when you have a baby, don't worry, mom, sleep when baby sleeps in nap time. I had to work when baby slept in nap time. That's basically what I had to do, because I had a full client load. I was still growing a business, and so I basically worked whenever I could. When he slept, I worked, full stop. In the evenings when Alex came home, I would work. In the mornings before you go to work, I would work. The weekends, I would work, and it was exhausting. He didn't really sleep very well either, so I was doing night feeds and all this kind of stuff. After a little while, Alex helped with the night feeds as well when he could, but it was really, really exhausting at that point. But my business was still growing. It was still growing, and actually, and my in-laws came and helped out. They did a day a week and stuff with him as well, and so he got to about 18 months old whilst I was doing this all at the same time. And we decided, actually, it's best that Alex comes and be a stay-at-home dad. And then I go into the business and have normal hours and all those kinds of things again. And we were at a place then at that point where was just about doable. So we thought, you know what, we'll just take the plunge and we'll plan that the business will grow anyway, and we'll be okay. And that's basically what we did. So he left his job. He became a stay-at-home dad full time. And I had my kind of working days back to being normal working days, still working from home, but it meant that, you know, during the 9 to 5, as it were, I didn't have to worry about Brock or childcare or any of that stuff. That was all Alex's domain. And so we chugged along like that. I fell pregnant with Callie, and then very similar, Callie was born. 3 days later, I'm back at my desk, and then Alex is looking after the two of them full time from then, and I continue to work.
Oh, that's unreal. I mean,
it is unreal. Yeah. In hindsight, I should have taken some maternity leave off. At that point, in all honesty, I was really scared to say to my clients, I need a few weeks off. I still felt like the business was too immature for me to step away for 2, 3, 4 weeks. I was really worried that I'd be letting people down. I was worried that it wasn't professional, in inverted commas, and I was really hung up on that. And I wish that I'd had the ability just to say to people, look, I've got a newborn. I need this time to, you know, rest and recover for myself, if nothing else. But at that point, I didn't feel confident enough to do that.
It's not amazing. Why do you feel you didn't have the confidence?
I feel, well, in part, I think it's because my clients pay monthly, and I was telling my story to myself that, well, they pay monthly, therefore I should be there for them. And if there's a month that goes by that I'm not, then what are they getting? Now, in reality, I had team doing like the number crunching stuff. There was stuff still happening, and I could have easily communicated that, but I felt nervous too. I felt scared and nervous too. And I thought they'll all walk away. I thought they'll think I'm not serious about my business or theirs, and therefore they'll walk away. Of course, in reality, looking back now, I don't think that would have been the case at all. And I suspect there was a lot of hormones tied up in those decisions and those thoughts. But that's what I thought at the time.
It's always, it's amazing the feelings and emotions we attach to all that, you know, as you say. And it's hard because you are your own boss, and sometimes the inner dialogue is worse than what anyone else can say.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, absolutely. The things that most people tell themselves are never things they would actually ever say aloud to somebody else.
No, it's, and our dialogue can be it's cutting, because it
can be mean. It can be really mean.
It's like it's our own, we know the words to say, or the certain things that actually trigger us completely. Whereas somebody else trying to insult us could be fishing around for a while to hit the right thing that actually gets us. But we can,
completely.
our own voice. I mean, you talked about networking and things like that. I mean, did you work on, in terms of your mindset, in terms of your own mental space and things like that? Was that coming into, or was it always, business orientated?
Yeah, I have done. I am a big reader of business books as well. So, and I love listening to podcasts. So I love consuming information and consuming content. So, yeah, I mean, over the years, I've read a lot of books and listened to a lot of podcasts all around, not just the kind of practicalities of business, but the mindset aspect of running a business for sure as well.
Who's your go-to in terms of reading books? Who do you look at?
Well, there's quite a few, if you can see my shelf behind me that I have. I don't think I've got one like pinpointed go-to be honest. I think I like reading over a kind of spectrum of business information, really, and I'm not really kind of pinpointed on one individual person. I do like the saying that, I do like the stuff that Kelly Roach has. So she has 3 or 4 books now, and I do like her books. I find them very practical. I'm quite a practical, logical person, and so I do enjoy reading things that are very practical rather than a bit more floaty.
So it needs to be hard number. You need to see it, you need to feel it, and
yeah, I like that.
Just while we're on it, I have to ask, and for people listening, in the background, I can see look like a framed picture. Something that says S minus P equals E.
Oh yeah, that was a gift, and it basically that it stands for sales minus profit equals expenses, and cool. that actually comes from a book, and it's this book here, called Profit First by Mike Malkowitz. And he speaks about basically flipping the standard equation in business. So the standard equation being sales less expenses equals profit. Yet too many business owners don't end up with any profit because there's no focus on it. And it's like the leftovers that they end up with. And that can sometimes be a loss and sometimes be very, very little. And he speaks about flipping the equation to sales less profit equals expenses. So making sure that, as the title of the book says, you set aside your profit first so that your business runs on the expenses that are left over, basically making sure you pay yourself first. So that's what that is.
How does that resonate with you then, in terms of pay yourself first?
I think it's really important. I think it's incredibly important. We do a lot of work on that with business owners, because I feel like if you don't do that, you end up in resentment for your business. That's the position I was in probably for the first 3 or 4 years of running the business, was that yes, I was working and getting new clients on board, but actually all the money was going back into the business, and you just start getting quite down about it, because it's every new client you're putting in this extra work, and it's like, well, what have I got for this? I've got nothing to show for this. And so I'm a big fan of this system because and this kind of ethos, because actually the more that we can support our families and the more that we can do that, then the more that we can do other good in the world. And until our own needs are met, then actually the way that we show up and support other people is going to be lessened as well.
That's interesting, because I mean, I was getting some almost pleaser genes in there earlier when you were talking about, in terms of, again, sort of having just had the child, that the monthly subscriptions and all the rest, but I have to be there, I have to be present. Was it a case of almost seeking that recognition, or was that side, or what you just said almost contradicts that slightly?
Yeah, there's definitely a seeking recognition part to my personality, for sure. I like the acknowledgement, and I like the there's definitely some ego associated with that, for sure.
Do you know where that comes from?
I don't know where that comes from. I think there's certainly a people-pleasing aspect to it, and a kind of being the good one type aspect to it, for sure. That was always something that I wanted to be throughout my life, was the good one, the one that did well, the one, and getting acknowledgement and getting praise for that. So I think it probably comes from a bit of that as well.
It's interesting because you described yourself right at the start as a good girl.
Yeah, exactly.
So even from there, it was,
it's definitely come through from childhood. I was never somebody that went out and, got drunk every weekend when I was a kid. I haven't smoked. I never did any drugs. Like, I didn't do any of that stuff. I was, as you say, the good girl. And that's something that I was, I guess, praised for as a child. I was, that was a good thing in our family, that's how I was. And therefore, actually, it's something that I've definitely taken into my adult life as well.
How do you feel about that now?
I find it challenging now, actually. I do find it challenging because it also leads to a perfectionism situation as well. And I don't always think that's healthy.
Why not?
Because nothing is perfect. Nothing can be perfect. It's life. Life is messy. And therefore, if you're always seeking perfection, actually, you're eventually going to drive yourself crazy.
It's always interesting. We're all good at driving ourselves crazy in so many ways.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, it's interesting. You've obviously, it comes across that you've processed a lot of this. You've thought about it. This is not just a sort of an unconscious thought now. It's something you've gone through. Even from picking up in terms of, you have your own podcast there. You, as you call it, Uncover Wealth Radio. And interestingly, your sort of your keywords there you pulled out are profit, wealth, and happiness.
Yes.
Can you talk to us about that?
I think they're all related, actually. I think that all are important in business, and I think all are related. And when I speak about wealth, I don't just mean financial wealth. I mean life and happiness. And I think all those words are actually linked to each other, because what's the point in having a business if we don't have all those three? I think they have to be there, because, like I said before, I think you breed resentment if you don't have them. If you're running a business and you're not happy about it, what's the point? If you're running a business and you're not profitable, what's the point? And if the wealth of those things does not exist in your life, what's the point? Why do things that are not enriching you in all areas?
It makes a lot of sense. Is there sort of a mantra or an ethos that you generally try and apply things, your life to, and the way you do things?
Not consciously. I think kindness is probably the big one. That's what comes to mind.
Yeah. That's interesting as well. And no, because like I say, I'm sort of struck by, almost, and going right back again to, you talked about, serving legacy and family, and how you've actually tied that back across to wealth as well, which I find quite, it's great. That it suggests a sort of a lot of work, or a lot of searching has been done around that would suggest that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I try and develop myself all the time. That's something that I think is really important, as in all areas, actually, as a parent, as a business owner, as a daughter, as a spouse, as a whatever in the world. I think it's important that we are trying to understand ourselves. I think it's important that we're trying to understand other people, and I think it's important that we are doing what we can in society. So yeah,
that makes a lot of sense. And in terms then, I suppose, from your parenting point of view, what's your style as a parent?
What is my style? Trying to understand my children, where they're coming from, to understand why they feel certain things and when, to instill kindness always, and to be supportive of them and what they want to do and why, even though they're only little, their thoughts are valid, their feelings are valid, and their opinions are valid. Now, I'm not saying that that means that we have ice cream at breakfast, but you then have a conversation with them about why that might not be the case. So, you know, making sure that we treat them as people is really important.
No, it makes a lot of sense. It is. Well, nothing wrong with ice cream for breakfast, by the way, but it's like,
yeah. Well, I don't know. Some days it feels like ice cream for breakfast might actually be a good idea.
yeah, I know. Just don't tell the kids.
Yeah,
you know?
exactly. Wait till they go to school, then have the ice cream.
I love it. So bring us. I mean, what's, you know, where you are now in terms of, you know, who can you serve best? I mean, who is really your sort of avatar as such?
Our best clients are basically coaches, consultants, trainers, people's in service-based businesses, essentially, whose revenue level is between about 100K and 3 million. That's basically where the bulk of our clients are, and that's where we do our best work with those types of clients. Yeah.
In terms of then, you know, working with those people, do you prefer to be more hands-on, or how do you normally work? I mean,
yeah, absolutely. We definitely prefer to be more hands-on. Like I said, I love learning about businesses, and I love learning about what, you know, why a client's doing their business, what they love about it, and what's driving the business. So that's something that I find incredibly interesting. So for a lot of our clients, we of course do all the compliance stuff, annual accounts, tax returns, all that stuff, bookkeeping stuff. But what we really focus on is looking at the profitability of their business and that side of things. And for a number of clients, we have monthly calls with them. Some we have weekly calls with them to keep on top of all that with them, to help and support them in their business's vision and what they want to achieve as well.
Because I noticed there on even on your website there, you know, there's a couple of key things you pulled out. So one is, you know, money leaks plugged. You know, that's quite a big one. Hidden cash revealed. Yeah. So these are almost potentially things, if I've understood correctly, that are already built into the business, but they maybe aren't being utilized or being revealed. Is that a fair?
Exactly. Yeah, that's completely fair. So many businesses are operating with basically things that the business owner does not need to work harder, and they don't need to put in more hours. But actually, if we look at how they're spending money, perhaps it could be done in a different way to make them more profitable, or even to generate more revenue. And then also, you know, if you look at things like team, or there's systems you can put in place for your team and those kinds of things to make them more focused on revenue generation, perhaps, so that it's not actually the business owner that's having to work harder to get these results. Actually it's looking smarter at the numbers and what they're telling you, and how you're using the money that already exists in the business as well.
So, I mean, typically what sort of areas, you know, do you sort of tend to find that, you know, there is profit or money sitting being wasted?
Yeah, so typically there is often what we do is we often look and just get a complete download of all the businesses spending by sort of supplier level, not when this is in the telephone bucket and this is in the advertising bucket, but actually like by supplier. And often you'll find that people have got bits of software they don't use anymore. They've got ad spend that's not performing for them. So there's various bits that actually, once you dig in, you go, hang on a minute, is this working? Is this delivering you a return? No. Okay. Why are you spending it then? And I think that, you know, when we're running a business, you can get really used to just business as usual, just things chugging along, and actually taking a step back and examining each individual amount that goes out your bank account on a monthly basis can actually yield some great results, because you go, well, actually don't use that, I've never used, not, you know, or I need to downgrade that's way too high a package, and those kinds of things. So that can be a really basic starting point for people. And then as well, we find that many business owners, because running a business is busy, we all have a to-do list as long as our arm. Sometimes we forget about the real basics. So the emailing your list, for example, can just go out the window and people completely forget it. But actually, when they do it regularly, they make sales off the back of it. So there can be some, other standard things like monitoring certain numbers in your business, how they're trending, for example, whether it's the bank account, your age debtors, whatever those might be, and just going, okay, well, if you looked at that trend, then this is what it's telling you.
That's always trends, and I suppose business as usual as a term, as you mentioned there, it could be both very profitable but also incredibly dangerous.
Yeah, completely. And I think it's always good to and it's really hard to try and take that step back from your own business and try and look at a more overall view. And it's really hard because most of the time you're stuck in the day-to-day. You're probably fighting a few fires, or wondering if you're not, you're wondering if anything is smoldering. And it's really hard to then kind of examine anything from a distance at all, because you're just in the weeds often all the time. And so setting aside that time and actually being able to say, oh, okay, let's look at this whole picture. Let's look at this, cash statement, profit and loss account, bank account, whatever that is. And let's just really see what's actually happening in there, because most people don't.
That's interesting. I mean, and do you tend to find there that you need to have a level of awareness, in terms of, because I'm sure there's some creative people who are creative geniuses, but I mean, their finances are a bit of a car crash.
Yeah, absolutely. And completely true, which is what we support a lot of clients that are in that creative space with, because they absolutely don't, and it goes back to that kind of burying your head in the sand stuff. They're really not interested in the numbers, but there's an awareness somewhere in there that actually I have no interest in this. I'm not interested in it at all. Like, money doesn't motivate me. I don't care about the numbers. But there's always a niggling thing that says, yeah, but if you don't make a profit, you're going to go out of business. You're going to run out of cash. And so when you can get them to understand that, which most people do, then actually they go, okay, well, hang on. Or they may have a spouse, a partner saying to them, when are you going to take home money from this business? You seem to be working pretty hard in it. Like, what's happening here? And that can start to jig them into oh yeah, actually, hang on a minute.
It is interesting, and that's, money doesn't motivate me type scenario, that.
Yeah.
I mean, how do you attach, someone who is creative based, as in, forward, and I want to come up with the next idea, but also then going, we have to hit reality here too, where, as you say, bills have to be paid and spouses and opportunities, right? So how do you cross that boundary for them?
Basically by having lots of conversations about it. And, and everyone's kind of trigger points on those are different, but it is explaining that, you spending money in the business is fine, but often it can be a trade-off. So either you spend it in the business or you take it home to live. Like, which do you want? You have a choice here, but we don't have a money tree. So like, where do you want it to go? And, getting them to realize that actually it's one or the other, and they need to prioritize which that is. And I can't make that decision for them. They have to make that decision. But when they make that decision, it's best that they do it in a way that is strategic and in a way that they actually understand what it means.
Because in your scenario there, I mean, you're talking about sort of, profit being, absolutely key. I mean, how do you define profit?
Profit, well, it's interesting because under kind of accounting, profit is a little bit different than how I speak to clients about profit. So of course you have to draw up accounts in a certain way with certain rules and regulations, and you get a profit number at the end of the day. Now, most business owners look at that profit number and go, that means nothing to me. Like, where's that money, quite frankly, if that profit is being shown on my accounts? So I say, yeah, completely ignore that bit. Profit for most business owners is the money left in the bank account. It is what's there. I mean, that to all intents and purposes is profit, but it's basically cash income less cash expenses. And that's how most business owners think about profit. And that's how we have profit discussions with clients, because that is actually the number that matters most at the end of the day, rather than the number that falls out of a beautifully prepared set of annual accounts.
And our interpretation or our mental attitude towards profit. I mean, you mentioned yourself in terms of, immersing yourself and learning and, expanding and growing and all that. But somebody else might be that, wow, that's my holiday to wherever, taken care of. I mean, is there a mechanism or anything that you sort of work around in terms of how you attach value to profit in terms of going forward?
I think it does. So, I mean, fundamentally, as a business owner, if you are happy with what you do with your profit, that's what matters. If you're strategic with what you do with your profit, that is where it comes from. So, and strategic can be taking it out and going on holiday. That can be your strategy, is to take it home and have fun. Absolutely. Or your strategy might be, you know what? I don't want any take home just now. I want to go hell to leather on building this business. I'm all in on it, and that's where I want to put my profit. That's fine. Again, though, it's only fine if it's strategic, because what tends to happen in that situation is just overspending rather than an actual strategy for reinvestment and growth. So that's where I think there's the dividing line is, if you're happy with how the business is going, do what you want with the profit. It doesn't matter. But make sure that if it's going back into the business, it's done strategically and it's not done because it's just spending too much.
How do you manage that yourself, if you don't mind me asking?
I don't mind you asking. Communication as a family as to what we want to achieve on that side, and then looking at the targets for business growth as well, and balancing up the two. I err on the side of taking money out of the business for us as a family. That's where I go to, because like I said before, I firmly believe that we have our life and our business should be in support of that. That's what I believe, and that's therefore how I operate my business, is that my business will be in support of my life and not the other way around.
It is. I mean, it's always interesting that getting that. And in terms of forward planning, then, I mean, do you forward plan in terms of where you want to get to, your compounding, etc.?
I love planning. I love planning. I am a massive fan of planning, but of course, plans are a complete waste of time if you don't actually implement them. If you don't actually then take the time to put them in place, they are a complete waste of time. But I love planning. I love setting a target and a goal, and I love hitting it. That helps drive me in business every single day, is that side of things. So yeah, I am, and that might also be coming back to the good girl thing and the perfectionism thing and hitting, if I set something and I achieve it, it probably is all linked. It's probably all goes together. But yeah, I'm a big fan of planning. And I think I know that people have said this before, but in terms of the time you spend planning saves you time along the lines, even though people don't want to set aside time to plan. I'm a big believer that it does save you time in the future. And I have big long lists of things and all that kind of stuff, because I'm a big planner.
I was going to say, give us an insight. How does that feel for you? I mean, what does it look like?
So in terms of family side of things, my husband and I have a conversation each week about what's coming up, who needs to do what, who's doing pickups, who's doing drop-offs, whose birthday parties do we have coming up, who's buying that thing. Like we do that together. And then on a business side of things, on a Monday morning, the first thing I do is I write down everything that's in my head that needs to be done that week. I just brain dump absolutely everything. I end up with like lists and lists of stuff, and then I say, okay, well, who in the team can do that? How can I delegate that out? And then what's for me? And then I put it in my calendar. Anything that I need to do, I actually block out time, and I actually put the individual things into my diary, because if I don't do that, I'm not going to magically find time from somewhere, so it's never going to get done. So I actually time block my diary out every day.
No, that's great.
And that includes family time as well. That includes family time. So I have in my diary every day, 5 to 7:30 is like family dinner, children's bedtime type time. I have that in there too. So I have everything blocked out.
always 5 to 7:30 is always chaos. It's lovely
Yeah,
chaos.
that's why I have to be at home, because otherwise Alex would have to deal with the chaos, and I don't feel right putting that all on him every day. So, and we have dinner as a family every night as well. So we have dinner with the kids when they eat, and we have, we all have dinner together. So that's lovely time as well.
It's always amazing, that sort of level of negotiation, trying to get everyone sitting at the same time. You kind of go, is this peaceful? Is this great family time? It's like,
yeah,
stress levels are
or
up
is
here.
it crazy? Yeah, they are.
Oh no, it's awesome in terms of doing that. So what, I mean, in terms of forward planning then, I mean, how far forward do you tend to lean in terms of your goals and targets and things?
So business wise, I will look, I've got a 10-year org chart drawn out. So I know I want my business to look like in 10 years. But, that's very kind of up there, and the granularity level doesn't happen. The granular, I've got sort of the next 90 days planned out. And it gets more and more granular the closer we get to that. But in terms of big picture, I've got the next 5 to 10 years kind of in my mind, but not necessarily, like numbers against that. The numbers go against it a year out, really. And then after that, it's more, okay, I want to go in this direction, and this is, where I'm headed. Because again, I'm a firm believer that if we don't know where we're going to end up, or where we want to end up, there is no way we can actually get there. It's like sitting in your car, not putting in the sat nav what your final destination is, and then just driving around and hoping you make it to the party. Like, that's never going to happen. You're never going to stumble across it. So I feel like it's the same in business, that if we don't know, and in our lives, if we don't know where we want to go, what that looks like for us, then how can we possibly work towards it? And I've seen it as well. I've seen it in businesses with business owners who've got 7-8 figure businesses, and they realize that this is not what I wanted. What am I going to do now? And they feel like they're in too deep, and there's too much revenue, too many clients, too much take home to actually change anything or end anything. And I don't want to be in that position.
It is interesting, because they talk about sort of businesses being in certain pond sizes, and whether they sort of, entrepreneurs, and it grows almost, it feels like it's the business is bigger than them, and then it sort of goes into, sort of mini size, medium size, bigger businesses. And I mean, it's always interesting, when you say you've such a revenue, you've such a revenue sort of stream to actually service, that actually you sort of go, my business, I have to do it. And it's saying the language changes to what you want to do. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does make sense. And I think that's often the case for people. And I think it's really important to try and get that balance, that yes, you have to do it, but you also want to do it. And I think I think planning comes into that a lot, in that, okay, in 10 years time, do I see myself still working one-to-one with clients? Do I see myself stepping back and doing something over here? Like, what do I see for myself in that? Okay, well, therefore I need to build my business with that in mind, and build that way, because otherwise I'm going to end up in a place I don't want to be. And I think that's really important for regardless of where you are in the business life cycle, actually, is to say, okay, where do I want to end up? What does that look like for me?
No, it makes a lot of sense. I'm curious then, in terms of the services you offer then, I mean, there's a lot there in terms of, you give back a lot. So in terms of, on the podcast side, the community side, all that, it's where can you add most value and sort of help people, and what's your overall strategy, if you don't mind me asking?
Absolutely. So where we help people most is helping make their business more profitable. They can, in reality, they can get any accountant to do their filing. That's just, that's just a process you have to go through. But where we add the value is that profitability side of things, and that strategic side of things, much more than, I believe, pretty much any other accounting firm out there, because that is heavily what we focus on with clients. So that's where we add the value.
So it's always good to see that, that where that focus lies. Some of this, in terms of, legacy was something you mentioned right at the start. Define that for us, if you would.
So legacy for me is being able to positively impact as many businesses as possible. That's what legacy is to me. And that's in part why I produce a lot of content and do the work that we do with clients, because that is what I want to do. I want to be able to positively impact as many business owners as I can.
And in terms of personal legacy, I mean, are you clear on where you're going there?
I think personal legacy for me, I see that as bringing up my children with I'm going to say right, with appropriate values. As I said before, kindness is a big one for us in our family. I think that, bringing up children that are emotionally intelligent as well and understand that is really important. So that's, on a personal side, that's where I see my legacy is making sure that they are healthy and happy, and that emotionally and that side of it.
And interesting then, in terms of, for where you are now, I mean, what would you say, or how would you sort of help sort of mini Annette, way back? What sort of advice and help would you be doing?
What would I tell mini Annette? Probably just be you. Just be you. Don't worry about stuff will happen. Just don't worry. Be yourself. Things will be okay.
It's very deep sounding, resounding.
Yeah.
That was awesome. What's a guilty pleasure for you?
Chocolate.
Give us your go-to.
Honestly, any chocolate is my go-to. Like I could quite easily buy a those bars you get at Christmas, like they're really massive. I could easily, honestly, sit and eat one of those in a day. I mean, I would probably feel sick at the end of the day, but I could still do it. I would still force it in, be like, oh, this is too good. So pretty much anything chocolate related is a big Achilles heel for me.
So are we talking always milk chocolate or dark
chocolate?
No,
any white, milk, dark, doesn't matter. Like seriously, any chocolate is all good.
Oh, I love it. And then for leisure and pleasure, what's up there for you?
Yeah, so I like exercising. I like to run. I like to go to the gym. I enjoy that a lot. I just recently started mountain biking as well, which I'm finding very fun. As a family, we like doing outdoors stuff. So whether that's on, cycling with the kids or hill walking, that kind of stuff. I enjoy doing, and I enjoy reading as well. I don't get a huge amount of time to read nowadays, but I do enjoy that as well.
No, that's awesome. Bit of a strange one. I mean, do you love yourself? Do you value yourself?
Most of the time. Most of the time. Not always, but most of the time I do, yeah.
It's always interesting how people answer. It's do you find, I mean, you keep on top of yourself in terms of monitoring your own sort of mental position?
Yeah, I do. I think it's really important. I find that I definitely feel if I don't go outside very much, if I'm not in nature a lot, if I don't exercise, I can feel that impacts me. And so I do make sure that I consciously do those things in order to keep my kind of mental health where I want it to be sitting. So yeah, for sure, I definitely find that. And I also actually find, like we said earlier, sleep plays a factor in that too.
That's awesome. So if you were to summarize your fire in the belly then in one or two words, what would it be?
Family, happiness, and legacy. That was awesome. 3. I know you asked for 1 or 2. That was 3.
No, it's interesting how, because the original answer was family, legacy, and serving, but the serving is part of the happiness, so it's awesome.
It is. Yeah, it is.
Tell us, where can people reach out to you, find you, track you down, stalk you, follow you?
Absolutely. So if they are running a business, then you can join the Uncover Wealth community, which is my private Facebook community. I should love to have you in there. I also, of course, like you said, have a podcast, Uncover Wealth Radio. And in most places across the internet, you can find me as Annette Fergs, Annette_Fergs, or Annette Ferguson. So I'm Annette_Fergs on Twitter and Instagram, and then pretty much everywhere else I'm Annette Ferguson. The website is annetteandco.co.uk.
Super. Annette, it's been absolutely wonderful having you on, so thank you very much.
It's been really lovely to chat, Pete. Thank you so much for having me.